Rachel Holt for NESN.com. Welcome to our fantasy football podcast. I'm joined by DJ Foster of Fox Sports. DJ, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks for having me on.
You got it. Week 1 of the NFL regular season is over. If you won in your fantasy football league, great. If you didn't, there's plenty more football to be played, so no need to panic. And DJ, I have to first ask you, what were the biggest surprises for you in week 1?
Big surprises for me were some impactful wide receiver twos that people were sleeping on in fantasy drafts. Guys like Mohamed Sanu in Atlanta having nice games, Brandon LaFell in Cincinnati, Will Fuller in Houston. These are guys that may not have gone in your fantasy draft, and if they did, they probably went towards the very back end. But they had nice games playing behind the big receivers like Julio Jones and those stars usually take up all the targets. These second receivers on the teams were finding single coverage and were really exploiting it. So that was really interesting to me.
Okay, as far as week 1 disappointments go, there were a number of players who underperformed in week 1. Just to name a few, Adrian Peterson, Des Bryant, Devontae Freeman. I know there's no reason to panic just after 1 week, but do any of the names I mentioned cause you any concern moving forward, or do you think their low-scoring weeks were just a fluke?
I am a little concerned with Adrian Peterson, probably more so than most. He didn't look good. He looked slow. He had a hard time finding the hole. He's getting up there in age. He's had a lot of carries, and those wear on you. And we've seen great running backs who dominated when they were 28, 29 start to fall off once they hit 30, 31, 32. I'm a little worried about Adrian Peterson. I think teams are going to dare the Vikings to beat him with the pass, and that box is going to continue to be loaded. He doesn't catch passes. There's just a lot of concerns there for his production going forward. So I am freaking out about Adrian Peterson, maybe a little bit more than most people.
Okay, and I know Des Bryant, that had me a little concerned that he wasn't targeted that much in his game. Of course, Dak Prescott is a rookie quarterback, so maybe we can kind of put it off on that. Do you think they start to work together better moving forward?
I think just because it was Prescott's first start, there's hope that it'll, they'll get it together as the weeks go on. But I think the concern is that we saw that Dez wasn't really an effective receiver without Tony Romo last season. So you factor that in, and maybe there is some cause for concern with Dez, but he came really close to catching an end zone touchdown that would turn his week totally around. And we wouldn't even be talking about this right now if he gets those feet in and gets that touchdown. So he's still going to get a lot of targets. I wouldn't worry too much.
Now that we have more insight as to how certain players are being used, how different teams are looking, things like that, which wide receivers can we target on the waiver wire?
There's a lot of interesting ones this week. Eli Rogers in the Monday night game was clearly the slot guy for Pittsburgh, picked up a touchdown. I think with Heath Miller gone, they're going to use their third receiver a little bit more over the middle than usual. We know Antonio Brown is going to draw a lot of attention, so I like Eli Rogers in Pittsburgh. Tajay Sharp in Tennessee looks good. He might have gone in your draft, but he could be available on the waiver wire. And then how about this one? Victor Cruz came back, scored a touchdown. Great story. Maybe Cruz, he played quite a few snaps. He's got the connection with Eli Manning. Why not, right? Take a chance.
Right, your colleague Ryan Fowler was big on Tajay Sharp today, I have to tell you, so he'll be happy that you mentioned him. But yeah, wide receiver on the field for 64 of the Titans' 67 plays. So he was being used a lot out there. As far as running backs go, who are you targeting on the waiver wire?
Yeah, running back is a tricky one. There isn't a lot of great options this week. There's a chance maybe that Tevin Coleman is available in shallower leagues, probably not in your league. Chris Thompson was used a lot in the Redskins in passing situations. Matt Jones has had injury troubles before. He may be worth a look at the backup. He was the clear backup there in Washington. Not a great week for backup running back options, though, on the waiver wire quite yet. There weren't really many big injuries in week 1 to running backs, so you might want to sit tight and target some of those receivers instead.
Okay, let's talk about some of the injuries that did happen that we're still kind of playing around with how they'll impact the fantasy football world. First, you hate to see guys go down with injuries ever, but especially when it is so early. The Chargers' Keenan Allen went down with an ACL tear. What implications does this have?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, Keenan Allen, you probably took him early second round, maybe even first round. I saw him go in some leagues. He was killing it before he got hurt. Again, this was a guy who easily could have been top 100 receptions on the season. So if you drafted Keenan Allen, you're hurting right now. And one of the problems with losing Allen is there's no real clear-cut answer for who replaces him on the Chargers. You would expect Travis Benjamin to pick up some of the wide receiver one duties, get some more targets. But he's not really that possession receiver kind of hog. He's more of a downfield deep threat. Tyrell Williams, Dontrell Inman, you don't really know who the guy is going to be there. Inman is probably the more reliable choice. Williams gives you some upside, but really you're scrambling. You gotta cut Allen. He's out for the season. I would look elsewhere outside of the Chargers for his replacement.
Okay, good to know. That's spoken as a Chargers fan or someone who is based out of San Diego, so we can just keep that in mind.
Right. Yeah, it's just pure sadness over here as a Chargers fan. The loss, when they were down 17, I looked over at my buddy and I said, the Chiefs were down 17. Allen was out. I was like, the Chiefs are winning this game. And he was like, no, come on. There's no way they're coming back. There's not enough time. But they're winning this game. It's just the life of a Chargers fan.
Spoken like a true Chargers fan. That's right. Well, speaking of the Chiefs, Spencer Ware is another interesting guy, and the injury landscape is interesting on that team. Jamal Charles, of course, was ruled out against the Chargers, and a lot of people were saying to pick up his teammate Spencer Ware. Well, Ware went crazy in Week 1. What do you think of his potential moving forward if Charles comes back into the lineup in Week 2?
Yeah, I think a couple more performances like this, and we may not see Jamal Charles being the 20-carry guy that he used to be. I do think that it'll be a split, pretty close to a 60-40 split, likely with Jamal getting the advantage later in the season, but we don't know when Jamal's going to play. It could be next week, it could be Week 3, it could be Week 4 until we see him. They have no reason to rush him back, as we saw in Week 1. With the performance that Ware and West was pretty good as well. So they have no reason to rush him back. As a Jamal Charles owner, you just got to be patient and wait. You're not playing him for this next week, more likely than not. You want to see him get on the field. You want to see what the timeshare split looks like. But later in the season, I still think he's going to be an impact player.
Okay, one more guy whose injury kind of impacts the people around him is Sammy Watkins, and we were getting conflicting info regarding his foot injury. Watkins himself says he'll be fine, but it's actually hard to know who to believe at this point. So if he does deal with this lingering injury, which according to some reports sounded pretty bad, what effect will this have on the fantasy football world?
Right, Watkins, I don't really know what to make of him. He's always seems to be hurt. You're always kind of dealing with these injuries with him. And he's kind of a boom or bust player as is. It's not like he's a consistent guy who gets you 8 catches a game and you roll him out and you trot him out every week. It just seems like a boom or bust situation. So if he's not fully healthy, I could see sitting him. Now, it's hard to bench your 3rd or 4th round pick if he's out there active and healthy, but I'm having a hard time trusting Watkins right now. I don't know if you're going to be able to play him this week.
Okay, well, we obviously have a lot to go off of going into Week 2. There's some injuries, some guys to pick up, that kind of thing. But you always have to keep your eye on the matchups. So as far as Week 2 matchups go, which games are looking favorable for offensive players? And thus, what games should we be keeping our eyes on when we make our starting rosters?
Yeah, Giants-Saints, that game could be 50-49. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but both of those defenses give up points by the bundle. The Saints especially, they can't stop anyone. I could see this being a real shootout. You got Breeze, you got Brandon Cooks, you got Eli, Odell Beckham. I mean, there's stars everywhere in this game. The passing games for both teams should be incredible. I can't wait. I think that's going to be a really crazy shootout.
Going off Week 1 performances, what guy do you think is just going to be the guy all year long? I know we saw Drew Brees out there putting up some big points, some of the usual suspects out there doing their thing. But what guy really stood out to you?
Yeah, maybe this is too easy based on where he was going in fantasy drafts, but just watching the games, I came away most impressed out of any player that I watched in week 1. David Johnson. He was incredible. His shiftiness, his juke, he was missing tackles, he was getting involved in the passing game. He can put his head down and run between the tackles. This guy can do everything on the football field, and it just seems like to me in that Arizona offense, he's going to be a massive fantasy points producer. There's just nothing that he can't do, and Arizona is clearly using him as their bell cow back. So David Johnson, I came away thinking, wow, this guy could lead all skill position players in points this year.
And I have to ask you, just because he was high up there on a lot of drafts, we had a lot of questions about him going into the fantasy football drafts, week 1, that kind of thing. Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas, from what you saw from him in week 1, are you excited about his future in the NFL and specifically this season?
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you have a heartbeat, you can be a Dallas Cowboys running back and put up 4 yards a carry. There's really not a whole lot you have to do behind that offensive line. As long as he doesn't get A, hurt, or B, fumble the ball a ton of times, he's going to be the guy for them. And he's going to just walk into successful fantasy football stats. He's the goal line back. Alfred Morris is going to be mixed in, but listen, it's no one has at the running back position, as long as they stay healthy, very few players have a higher floor than Ezekiel Elliott. He's just going to walk into fantasy stats.
Hey, he said it himself, the easiest job in all of America. All right. Any other final things we should keep our eye on moving into week 2?
I think just general advice I like to give people is don't fall in love with your fantasy defense. Yeah, they may have had a good week, but if they have a bad matchup, if you're playing a great offense like the Saints or something along those lines, dump them. Don't get attached to your fantasy defense. Stream. Find a good matchup. Pick on these bad teams that are starting rookie quarterbacks where you can get those pick six or those fumbles and sacks. Don't get attached to your fantasy defense.
That's great advice. I usually do get attached, so I will take that advice myself moving forward. All right, DJ, where can we find more from you?
So I am on Twitter at FoxSportsFoster, and we have tons of features up on foxsports.com/fantasy. We have rankings, projections, stats, the whole deal, anything you need. So that's where to find me, and on Twitter at FoxSportsFoster.
Okay, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to your insight in the weeks to come. Like I said, plenty more fantasy football to come, so don't be discouraged early on. Appreciate the insight.
All right, thanks, Rachel. Appreciate it.
Thanks.